Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our final Facebook Live Friday of January. This is our fourth and final of January, and we've been doing a series of 4 Facebook Lives based around the run-up to Learning Technologies 2018. And what we've been doing is 30 days of digital learning inspiration to really give people an insight into a lot of the buzzwords that are going on in your industry. We've talked about social learning, we've talked about virtual learning, and last week we talked about curated content for learning with Stephen Walsh. All the videos are available on YouTube if you want to take a look at the previews. But today I'm delighted to be joined with Kate Graham. Very welcome, Kate. We're doing a preview of Learning Technologies, the conference that is coming up next week. Kate is a veteran of the conferences. She has been to 14. And the only other person I know who's been to more is Stephen Walsh. He's been to 15. But Learning Technologies itself has been running for 20 years. And if you think about what 20 years ago, where we were at in terms of technology, not even learning, but in terms of, general technology, we were just kind of getting started with the internet. We didn't really think about video on the internet. We didn't really have that sort of technique. Nowadays, we have ubiquitous video, it's video everywhere, everything, and so on. So there's been such a sea change, such a social change, even over the last 20 years. And what's good about Learning Technologies is that it's actually kept up with that change. So I'm going to pass over to Kate. Kate is the expert on Learning Technologies. She's going to explain what it's like at Learning Technologies, some of the highlights, some of the things to look out, and really how it's changed over the years. So over to you, Kate. Very welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I guess Learning Technologies, if you haven't been before, it's a conference and an exhibition. And what I would say is it's not just all the content in the conference and then, a few stands. First of all, it's grown enormously. There's now 2 halls full of vendors, different providers, professional bodies, institutes. Fosway has an analyst lounge there, so there's all sorts of things. It's not just people kind of selling their wares. And there's 10 free seminar theatres as well. So I think that's one of the first things to get out there is there's a lot of value there, even if you're not going to the conference. That there is that. And obviously my role is as social chair is to kind of bring that content to people who aren't there, but also to curate it, I suppose, a little bit, to hark back to your conversation with Stephen last week, for people who were there. And I know that I certainly go back and look at sessions that I couldn't go to, and that maybe I missed, things I missed. So that's the kind of the point of the back channel that I get involved with as well, is to kind of share the learning love, if you like, around the world, but also then, it does act as a form of curation and hopefully reflection for people as well. I think there's usually, I don't know, something like 12,000 people come through the doors over the 2 days. So it's pretty epic.
So if we were thinking about just explaining the overall structure, so we have 2 days, we've got, I would say there's 3 parts to it. There's a main talks itself. So we have all our industry gurus and a lot of companies sharing their experiences in digital learning. We have the exhibition space, and surrounding that exhibition space, we also have a series of free seminars. So there really is something for everyone. And you and I had talked about this before, Kate, but we kind of look at Learning Technologies in the same way as we would like workplace learning to evolve.
Yeah.
So at Learning Technologies, there's a little bit of formal learning, there's lots of conversations, there's things you can pick and choose, there's informal learning, you can personalize it to your own tastes. And if we could just transport the heart of Learning Technologies into the workplace, we would be doing really, really well. So tell us about your back channel. It's not just on Twitter this year. I believe you're going to be doing some live interviews and on Instagram and a few other platforms. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, it's kind of evolved, as I guess social media's evolved. So I think it's the 6th or 7th year I've been involved with it now. And I guess, the main platform generally is Twitter, but I guess it's not called the Twitter team. I don't call it that. So the point of the back channel is the sharing, and it manifests itself predominantly on Twitter. Most events have hashtags nowadays, but we try to make it as easy for people to tune in as possible for the other kind of noise, which is, great. But if you are particularly interested in something specific, then you can zero in on that. And so, yes, it does manifest itself on Twitter. But I mean, in the part, I mean, things come and go, right? So a couple of years ago, everyone was talking about Periscope. Well, now
Yeah.
actually you can just do video within Twitter. So,
Yeah.
you don't need to worry about that. So, but yes, I mean, things like Instagram's obviously got massive traction. People use the stories for live video. You've got things like Snapchat, which I'm not a user of personally. So I've just encouraged the team this year to kind of go where they hang out. Neil Gavin's talking about some things on Facebook, for example. So I think it needs to be just where you hang out and where you think people might be interested. And obviously after the fact, then we get a lot of blogs. So people are talking about that on maybe their own platform. There's things like this that go on YouTube. We're interviewing some of the speakers and capturing that to go on YouTube as well, and the Learning and Skills Group site. So it's very much, it's not platform specific. It's just very much about the ethos and that sort of sharing mentality.
Yeah. And so if you're thinking about, even if you're not attending, I mean, I haven't attended in the last few years, and I've actually learned quite a lot on the back channel, and actually been able to write up a post, and you nearly think I was there, because the back channel information is so good because of how you've organized it. So if we were thinking about kind of trends to look for, practical stuff that is going to help people in the workplace. So obviously there's a big conversation going on at the minute about AI.
Yeah.
And there are people there doing talks, not necessarily a lot of tools yet in the space of AI other than chatbots. But what about stuff like personalization and adaptive learning and continuous learning and self-directed learning, all of those things that we really want to do well in the workplace? What can we look out for in terms of those?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned chatbots, because we've got a cheeky little surprise for conference attendees, which is to actually have a play with a chatbot, which encourages you to capture your key takeaways, and then it prompts you to reflect on those after the fact. So really excited about that, because it kind of feeds into that learning ethos of, it's not just about one intervention, so it's about some reflection, some space learning, things like that. But actually it also lets you have a chat with this bot, and it lets you experience a really practical application of AI in learning. So yeah, we've got that going on, and details will be posted about that a little bit later. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of themes around. I mean, there's a few sessions around learning systems, because I think we're in an interesting point on that at the moment, and how do people kind of create almost like learning ecosystems and put the different things together to make a coherent solution for the learners. There's several sessions around content, so you talk about video. There's a session on the buzzword micro learnings, obviously the flavour of the month. So and AI, I think, has 2 or 3 sessions. There's one on VR and AR, which probably feels quite far away for some people, but there's other then very practical sessions on things like mentoring, which obviously don't require necessarily anything tech wise or any massive spend. It's just about kind of doing the right things and using your resources in the right way. So there is something for everybody. And what's interesting when I go out to the back channel team every year is I always try and give people their first preference, and everybody, it's almost self-selecting. Everybody's got different interests and different areas of priority for them over the coming year, and that just manifests itself in quite an even spread, which is always quite interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of rise of AI is interesting. It'll certainly be. I'd love to get a hands on you on the bot as well. So I'm just going to kind of wrap up there, Kate. We're nearly at an end. So learning technologies, as it went very quickly. Learning technologies has something for everyone. Informal, formal, lots of new tech, but also lots of practical advice. Do obviously go to the main conference itself, but do visit the exhibition. Logic Earth are on stand A15, and we would love to have a chat to you about this digital learning revolution we have before us. And Kate, what stand is Fosway at?
It's the Fosway Analyst Lounge, and you can't miss it really. It's in the middle of the hall. And one thing I'd say is, if you're coming into town the night before, into London, and maybe you don't know many people, or maybe you want to get together with some other people, I've got some details which I think you're going to share, where I'm just rounding up waifs and strays for you know, kind of geeky learning conversations and a beer. So I'm hoping that that'll kind of, you know, serve quite well and help the networking kick off, because that's one of the big things really, as we were talking before. It's, you know, we're lucky enough to have the technology to talk like this and do things like this, but actually getting together in person is really nice, even if it's only once a year.
Good stuff. Okay, so Fosway Lounge and stand A15 for us. We hope to see everyone there, and we'll share a few resources after this to help direct people to good parts. So thank you, Kate. Thanks. That's over and out for us for January. We'll take a break for Learning Technologies, and we'll probably join back in the middle of February for our next Facebook Live. So over and out. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.